Good morning and good afternoon, RSGA, and welcome to this video recording of identifying the clouds, what to look for when looking towards the atmosphere. Now, it's really important to understand where clouds come from. And if you're a part of this STEM class, by the time we present this unit, you've probably already learned that in science, the water cycle is responsible for, well, the clouds. And effectively, what clouds are condensation or condensate of water droplets, small little tiny water droplets that have converged to form these clouds. Alrighty? And that happens through the water cycle or through the evaporation of the water. You see, water will evaporate and rise to the sky only to form and then fall back down again, right? Part of the idea of the water cycle. Now, as you get higher and higher up into the atmosphere, it gets, well, colder and colder and colder. And the colder you get in the atmosphere, the less water that could be housed in, well, those various layers. And we'll talk more about layers here in a few moments. So what are we looking at? Well, one, why do we need to learn about clouds? Well, clouds and identifying clouds helps us gauge and understand what's happening right now. In other words, effectively, if you're really good with identifying clouds and knowing what they mean, you can look out the window and figure not only what the weather is going to be like in a few minutes, but how is the weather right now? Not necessarily the temperature, but hey, is it going to be raining soon? Should I start some yard work? What's coming around the horizon? It also helps with forecasting future weather. Okay, what's going to happen in a couple of hours? All right, I see certain new cloud formations coming. What does that mean? All right, hey, it's really overcast today. What should I expect? It's almost like a blanket of gray over us. Should I be thinking something might happen? And identifying things is part of the scientific process. I mean, this is STEM class after all, science, technology, engineering, and math. And identifying parts is, well, just the nature of science, all right? The part of meteorology that we need to know, the science of weather. As much as you would identify parts in the science of, say, biology, where you're identifying the individual parts of a living organism. All righty, there you go. All right, so let's go ahead and move forward here. I'm going to leave my little camera up, my little lens here, and I understand that some of the presentation kind of overwrites that a little bit. See if I can move this guy down a hair. That's about as far as I can move it down. And that's okay because I'm going to leave the slides presentation up for you to look back onto so you can see the words behind my image there. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so let's look at the clouds of the lower level first. All right. Yes, the atmosphere is kind of like a sandwich. And literally, I mean sandwich, not an onion. All right, ogres and onions, yes. Ogres and sandwiches, well, it depends on the sandwich, right? But it's like a sandwich, and a good sandwich is going to have multiple layers to it, all right? And that's what our atmosphere effectively is it's layers upon layers upon layers. You got your low level, you got your mid-level, and you got your upper level. And then you could also even start talking about the weather in the way upper levels that we're just not going to worry about right now in this lesson because it's beyond the scope of what we're talking about here. All right, so let's talk about what we'll find from the ground going up. All right, so very first level, we should usually find stratus clouds. Now look at this picture. Doesn't it kind of look almost like a fog that's kind of sitting just above the ground itself? Well, that is the case with stratus clouds, usually found under 6,000 feet and can even be at ground level where it is, well, fog. It could be white or gray in color, and as that fog starts to lift, you'll start seeing these lower level clouds. Now, usually, stratus clouds blanket an area, and it blocks some of the sunlight, all right, and is usually associated with rain or even snowy conditions. Usually a light rain, not a super heavy rain like you would get in a storm or what have you, and a super light snow, not a heavy snow as in with like thunder snow or a blizzard. Now, stratocumulus clouds are a little bit different. They're found a little bit higher up, all right? And they're usually found at 7,000 to 10,000 feet, so a little bit higher than where you find the stratus clouds. Now, if you look at this picture here, you can see what that kind of looks like. It's a little bit higher up. They're definitely puffy, okay? Almost like little cotton balls that are just kind of sitting up there, but they're like groupings or lines of cotton balls up there, right? They may be layered with other types of clouds, and they may even cover the whole area with some sunlight peeking through. But the cool thing is that usually when you see these, there might be some rain on the horizon, but usually they're associated with really, really good weather. Now, the best kind of clouds out there that you'll see that are associated with good weather are cumulus clouds. Now, cumulus clouds are found in the same area as the stratocumulus, between the 5,000 and 10,000 foot range, and this is what we typically see here in Florida. They are flat and gray on the bottom because the light's having a hard time penetrating through the top. Okay, that's why they have that kind of gray or shadowy appearance. And they look like little, I said these look like cotton balls. These look like little fluffy clumps of cotton balls kind of put together. Now, these cumulus clouds usually indicate that the weather's going to be good, that there's very little rain. In fact, if you get these cumulus clouds and they peak up a little bit, you might see like a small rain shaft develop with these and then quickly go away. In fact, we'll get some sun rain here in Florida, and usually that's because it's coming from a cumulus cloud, as the sun is hitting the cloud and effectively, I'll use the word dissolving or evaporating the rain and causing the rain to condense from the heat of the sunlight and fall in little rain shafts themselves. On the next level up, we have altostratus. Now, this is very similar to the stratus clouds that we were talking about earlier, but they're way higher up there, way higher up in the atmosphere, 10,000 feet above where the stratus cloud usually hangs out at. So usually found around 15,000 feet. They're usually gray in color, and they cover the sky, and they're usually associated with just like a slow, steady rain for long periods of time, maybe even off and on rain and what have you. And sometimes when it darkens up, when it's like this, you can see it darken up and you're like, uh-oh, it's fixing to rain a little bit. And it may not be a big, huge thunderstorm, but it might be just, hey, some rain is coming, maybe front systems coming through or what have you. So that is the altostratus clouds. Now, the altocumulus clouds are found way above that, usually between 20,000 and 25,000 feet. And they literally look like little puffs of cotton balls, just being suspended way high in the air. And sometimes they'll be like white like you see here. They might be kind of grayish in color as you see in that area. And sometimes they'll even be flat in appearance. Usually these precede cold weather or thunderstorms, or will be seen in colder weather itself. And so when that cold air mass, is kind of digging in and that warm air is rising, or that maybe that cold air is kind of just sitting in the area and you got another mass coming through, you might see some of these clouds as well. So that's the altocumulus cloud itself. Let's see here. Let's go to the next one here. I got 15 minutes total, and I see my clock's at 8:30. All right, so the next level, this is the high level of clouds, all right? First, we're going to talk about the cirrocumulus clouds. Now, this is really, really interesting. These are, let's see here. They look like waves. See how they're kind of like waves that like you would almost see at a beach? I'm not talking just because the colors of the light around it looking kind of beachy or sandy in color, but think about looking as almost if you were looking upside down at the beach and you were to see, hey, those look like waves coming into the ocean. Or if you were to look up from the bottom of the ocean and see those, like you see cameras looking at looking at the sky while they're still in the water, and you see these kind of wavy things. That's what they usually look at. And they're like that because it is very dry and very cold where they're at, and they're ice crystals. And it's not ice crystals that are falling like snow, but they're just being suspended up there, right? They're usually found between 35,000 and 40,000 feet, and this is usually a little bit higher than where the commercial aircraft, the commercial airliners like to fly. And so it's a little bit higher than that. And like I said earlier, they're usually associated with dry and cold. Cirrus clouds. Well, cirrus literally means wisps of hair in Latin. And we'll talk more about Latin here in a few minutes. But you can see here, literally, little wisps of hair kind of falling off from the surrounding wind. Now, these, like the cirrocumulus, are found at 35,000 to 40,000 feet. And they are usually associated with great, dry, sunny weather. So if you see these clouds in the sky and you don't see any other ones, you know it's going to be good weather out there. And then finally, things that we're familiar with in Florida, the cumulonimbus cloud. These are usually found starting at 5,000 feet and go as high as 30,000 feet. These are usually associated with rain, storms, and sometimes even severe weather. Now, this guy right here, this picture I chose because it has what they call the anvil present on the top. If you're familiar with the anvil, that's what the iron worker uses to forge his iron when he's striking it with the hammer, and it looks kind of like an anvil in its shape itself. And the reason it has this shape is because the cold air and the warm air have started to work together in unison and started to spiral or twist upwards, throwing the clouds way high in the sky. And usually the anvil patterns are associated with severe weather, hail, and tornadoes. Now, you don't have to have this anvil presentation on a cumulonimbus cloud. It could just simply be these little puffs of clouds, kind of like a round, puffy top at the top of it, and you could still get good rain and good lightning from it. Basically, it's just a rising of the air itself. So, by chance, did you catch a lot of those words were used multiple times? Example, alto, or cumulus, or strato. So, those words come from the Latin language. And I'm going to read a little something here about Latin. Latin originated more than 2,500 years ago in ancient Rome and was the primary written language of Western Europe for hundreds of years. So although they stopped speaking Latin, they were still using Latin for writing. And this stopped about 600 years ago when people began using their own local languages for writing. All right, but even then, Latin continued to be used as the language of scientists and scholars. In fact, more than half the words in the English language are of Latin origin. Well, that's interesting, right? So think about what some of these words mean. We use the word alto, like alto stratus or alto cumulus. Although in Latin it means high, we have come to learn that this is kind of like in the middle. All right, you heard cirrus or cirro. I said it comes literally from the Latin word of wispy hair. That's absolutely correct, or little curls of hair. If you go back to the presentation and look at that slide, you can see that curling happen. You had the word cumulus, or to pile, or to heap in Latin. All right, and of course you got nimbus, which literally means cloud, and it was nimbus cloud was usually associated with, well, rain. And of course stratus. Did you hear that word stratus? We had both the stratus cloud and the alto stratus cloud. Means to blanket or cover. In the case of Latin, to spread. So I hope you picked up something from this lesson on clouds, and I hope you're able to, well, take something positive from it and maybe even start doing your own weather forecasting based off of what you see. And clouds are really awesome because depending on the layers that they're at and where they are at, the sun can reflect in different ways and be really, really pretty. And although this image in the background here is really pixelated, you can see some of those reds and pinks and peaches and those natural colors of the sun being reflected off the clouds here in the sunlight. By the way, what kind of clouds are these? Interesting.